Councillor Patterson. Do you wish to speak to that, Councillor Deputy?
Yeah, just straightforward, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to move the recommendation on page 1 that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 18th of July 2017 as circulated be confirmed.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson, do you wish to speak?
No, thank you.
No one wishes to speak against that? The Deputy? No closing?
No,
thank
Mr.
you. All
Mayor.
in favour? Against? Motion carried. Item 6.1, Council. Peppercorn trees in Homewood Drive, Maribna. We have a recommendation on page 2. Does any councillor wish to move a motion?
I move that motion, thank you, Mr Mayor. I wish to move.
Councillor For. Any other closing comments? Thank you. All in favour? Against? Motion carried. Now, councillors, item 7.1, the Australian Botanic Gardens Special Committee. There is a recommendation on page 3. Does any councillor wish to move a motion, please? Councillor Abdullah. And what's that motion, Councillor Abdullah?
I would like to move the recommendation on page see that we have got experienced and passionate committee members who have come back, who have been, and there's a recommendation for their reappointment. However, in future, I would hope that there are some new players in the field as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hazelman.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I think it'd be remiss not to mention the incredibly good work that this committee has done in delivering budget, which forms Council's performance statement.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder, please? Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Patterson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yeah, this is a bit like reading a book over 4 years, really. It's been going on for 4 years with our first council plan. There was lots and lots in it.
Any other councillor wishing to comment for or against?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to say as a new councillor, it's been a very interesting process looking back on the 4 years prior, and the support given to us with this new council plan from our prior councillors has been invaluable as a learning platform. I'm excited about the council plan on the prior 4 years.
Don't know how to take that, councillor.
No, I don't.
also contracts currently being, or tenders currently being evaluated, and this is a substantial part of our next year's capital works program is being determined right here. Works out at Cosgrove, Numurkah Road works associated with the the sports precinct, of course, Concept Designs, Maud Street Mall, you know, that one there about lump sum contract with the provision of condition survey, sealed road, seal and pavement, the work that's going to flow out of that body of work. The solar farm, which has been a bit of a sleeper in terms of public recognition. This has got the potential to be a very significant and substantial project, and of course work at Aquamoves. And the next stage of the Welsford Street upgrade, the Knight Street intersection, as I said, is a substantial part of our capital works budget to be determined on this page.
Do you speak against the motion? For the motion? Councillor Abdullah?
Just a quick comment. Again, this is about the governance at the council, and this particular recommendation, this particular section really demonstrates that the visibility, and community members can get the visibility to the upcoming projects, and that's why it's, I think, really important, and it just reflects the good governance aspect of the council.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor wishing to comment for or against? Councillor Patterson.
I'll just make a couple of quick comments, thanks. And one of the ones that really stands out is Cosgrove. We've spent an enormous amount of money on that, which we have to do, and it's right that we do. But when you look at what's on TV the other week, when there's, I think it was Four Corners had a show, and the Queensland regulations just, it makes you cry sometimes that we've got to pay this amount of money and they're just dumping. That'll come back and bite them on the bum, and I hope it does. And the very big ones, of course, is the Maud Street Mall, which the community's out there wanting answers for, and this is the first step in that. And I'm personally very excited about the solar farm. I think that's going to bring a new dimension to our whole region.
Fantastic, thank you. That being said, Councillor Hazel, any closing comments?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I'm glad that Councillor Patterson raised that Four Corners program, because it provides me the opportunity to make a bit of a comment about it. The fact that in Queensland, the very politically contentious issue is there is no waste levy on landfill, and that's obviously the reason why the trucks are flowing across the border. We from time to time complain about the levy here in Victoria, but it certainly provides some degree of self-regulation of the industry. What we'd like to see, though, is that the development fund, that where that money is going into, that the government should free a bit of that up, and that obviously the money that we're spending at Cosgrove, that we're financing ourselves, would be in a more logical time a good target for that development fund to be investing in this type of project.
Indeed. Thank you, Councillor Hazel. And all that being said, in favour of the motion? Against? Motion carried. Item 8.3, Councillors, Municipal Association of Victoria, 2016-2017 Key Achievements. We have a recommendation on page 13. Does any councillor wish to move a motion, please? Councillor O'Keefe.
To move the motion on page 13, 8.3, the Municipal Association Victoria, known as MAV, 2016-2017 Key Achievements.
Marvellous. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Sutton. Should speak to the motion, Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The municipal, or the MAV as known, is the legislative peak body for local government in Victoria. Key functions of the MAV include advocacy, support training and the provision of advice to councils and councillors. And I will say in recent months I've been quite involved with the MAV, doing some training, great support network, and I am really pleased with the support we get through MAV. I recommend that the Council note the key achievements which are extensively listed of the Municipal Association of Victoria during the 2016-2017 financial year.
Thank you. Councillor Sutton.
Yes, much the same. I've had a lot of contact with the MAV over the past 6 months, and they do hold some great training for new councillors, which is very much appreciated. I just note in this report all these highlights, and there are some very good ones, that the securing the Commonwealth funding for 5 hours operational costs per week in 2018 for the National Universal Access to the Kindergarten program, and hopefully they're going to continue their advocacy to seek long-term funding, which we certainly need. The extension of the Roads to Recovery program until 2021 was confirmed in the federal budget, and they're just a couple of things that they've done. So yes, I just I would agree with Kim and recommend that recommendation.
Thank you, councillor. Any councillor wishing to speak against this motion? For the motion, councillor Summer.
I would like to say that the MAV, as far as my experience goes, they are worth their weight in gold. Their partnership with local councils is highly valuable. They're very strong advocates. They consult widely, they educate, and they actually play quite an active role in the development and strength of Victorian councils. As we've heard, their contribution by securing Commonwealth funding for early learning has been extensive. They have advocated for roads to recovery, as was mentioned. They have highlighted adverse impacts on the state's rate cap policy, which has hit local councils quite hard, and sometimes it's difficult for us to get a clear picture of how that is affecting local government, but it's the MAV and the VLGA who come up and give us this data to say, hang on a minute, this is what's going on and this is how it's going to impact people on the coal face. So what's interesting is that they also fight against cost shifting that we can get from the state government or from the Commonwealth government. We have here that they've secured a commitment from the Premier to restore 50-50 funding for school crossing supervisors, which was cost shifted to us a long time ago, and it looks like that's starting to be a bit more equitable in terms of funding. And we've also had a cost shift for councils to manage roadside weeds and pests, but the MAV have directly advocated for 5.4 million allocation to councils so that the cost shift isn't quite as significant. And interestingly, we've just had a conversation about the landfill levy, so it mentions in this that the MAV is putting pressure on the state to reinvest that landfill levy. There is some reinvestment going on with the Sustainability Fund in terms of small projects that are likely to reduce greenhouse gases and result in joint procurement across councils, which is terrific. But when you look at the state requiring each local council to retrospectively rehabilitate all the landfills that have been left in their municipality over many decades, which is a multi-million-dollar endeavour, and they're not actually putting any money towards achieving that goal, you do wonder why they're even holding on to the levy or what purpose it is achieving.
Thank you, councillor. Any councillor wishing to speak against the motion? For the motion, councillor Abdullah.
Yeah, I think MAV is an effective platform for advocacy and lobbying, and if whatever achievements they have highlighted in this report, and also after looking at the report, it appears that the key achievements benefit all councils across the board, and it illustrates that the collective voice can be the effective voice for shared objectives and goals. So I think the member benefits report that is included in this report kind of gives that kind of comfort feeling and confidence that the membership fee is justified. So well done to MAV on these achievements.
Thank you, councillor. I'll add my own comments to that. I think one thing that isn't listed here is they fought strong and hard to prevent many councils from being actually sacked early or mid last year in respect to the adoption of the Code of Conduct. There was some inaccuracies on both sides there, but so they were right in the thick of that fight, and they helped achieve the outcome, which resulted in legislation change pretty much overnight. So they've done that as well, to add that to the list, so I congratulate their achievements as well. That being said, councillors, Councillor O'Keefe, any closing comments?
Just one very small one in perhaps the process I've noticed myself is networking with other councillors from other regions has been very powerful. I got to meet all the Bendigo councillors recently at a forum, which was great, and many rural councillors I met recently on a weekend away. So I think that's very powerful. I found that a very good learning experience with discussion and processes, and yeah, just networking. I think it's a great thing that MAV bring councillors together from different regions.
Good, thank you. All in favour of the motion, councillors? Against? Motion carried. Item 9.1, the adoption of the Truans Road investigation of fragmented farmland. We have a recommendation on page 17, councillors. Does any councillor wish to move a motion? Councillor Giovanetti.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that Council adopt the investigation of fragmented farmland to the Truan Road area and note Council officers' intention to prepare and exhibit a planning scheme amendment to include the investigation of fragmented farmland in the Greater Shepparton Planning Scheme as a reference document.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. So, Councillor Giovanetti.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This issue actually goes back to around about between 2010 and 2012 when it first came before Council. And it took a little bit of understanding, I have to admit. And now that I have got a good handle on it, it's good to see that the area south of Truan's Road has, or will be, remain as it has been, even though they are fragmented blocks and they don't meet the normal rural living zone requirements. By moving the motion tonight, we're accepting that those particular properties will remain the same as they are now.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Patterson.
Yes, as Councillor Giovanetti has explained, fragmented farmland it's been an issue for a while. It's been lingering. Our staff have done a great job to pick it up, but it's been hanging around unfinished since 2010. So now it'll go into the proper master plan and all will be good. And we'll have some fragmented farmland on our agenda, which I'm really excited about.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any councillor wishing to speak against this motion? Or the motion? Councillor Summer.
The report mentioned that there was some fragmented farmland there, but not enough to reduce the viability of the agricultural land that is also there. So we're pretty much just going to make no change in that we're not going to fragment it any further, and obviously we can't claw it back because that's already happened. It does seem like a long time between a resolution and implementation, but it wasn't considered a top priority, and really the whole time that it's been worked on, it's only cost us around about $6,000. So it's good to get this over with, and yeah, it's a report that offers no change, which is generally a status quo that doesn't cause a lot of controversy. So I'm happy to pass this one.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor wishing to comment either for or against? No, good. Thank you, Councillor Giovanetti.
I think it's been adequately covered, Mr Mayor.
I think it has. All in favour of the motion? Against? Motion carried. Item 9.2, councillors. Submission to the Inquiry into National Freight and Supply Chain Priorities Discussion Paper, May 2017. We have a recommendation on page 24, councillors. Do I have a councillor wishing to move a motion, please?
I'll move
Councillor
that.
Summer?
I'll move the recommendation as a motion on page 24 that says that the council note the submission into the be a specifically Shepparton project, but allowing alternative industry to develop in the town is also inclusive in the questions here. It also mentions a possibility of a trial, which I think might be going ahead at Crescas Brothers for a 24-hour food inspection of freight, rather than having to transport it to the Port of Melbourne that have limited hours, which reduces efficiencies. Here we have a rural location in the middle of the food bowl with no delays, so that's I'm incredibly supportive of that. There was also a question around whether there's access to hubs and ports and whether we expect to face problems moving freight in our region in the future. I would draw attention that the Port of Melbourne having had it sail to a private company, there is the potential for that port to increase in cost, which actually has a monopoly over all of the freight transport through the region. So if that's the case, it actually does
the inland freight rail line to Brisbane, unfortunately, looks like we might have missed out on that, and that is very sad. To me, it shows a government that has no imagination, no foresight. So therefore, it's even more important we get back on the front foot and be more proactive in being involved in some of these things. I'm extremely confident if we come back in 50 years, some years will be still here, but probably I won't be. In 50 years, this will be a real freight hub of Australia, not just Victoria. I believe the way we're situated, the produce that will be flying out to Asia, etc., from our new airport, the new railway line, everything will be centralised through Shepparton or the Goulburn Valley. I'm very confident. But to do that and to be successful, we have to be involved in every possible way we can. And this is a way of keeping our nose in it and showing the rest of the country that we're up to this and we want to be involved.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor wishing to speak against this motion? For the motion? Oh, we've got two hands up there. Councillor O'Keefe.
Down.
Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just that the submission is extremely extensive. I think it's been a great way for me to try and get a grip on things in a little bit more further detail. Obviously, we get our briefings, we get things coming through, but after reading this submission, a couple of times and really focusing on some key issues, I think it's a great submission. It's very intensive, it's very extensive, and it's got a lot of, hopefully, a lot of weight that we'll have moving forward.
Region is changing, it's growing, and the economic development of this region can accelerate provided we remove these barriers. And there are these other barriers. We have to talk about the freight movement, the traffic movements, and the management of the traffic movement. In particular about, we were just talking about the Cosgrove Landfill 3, which is a state hub facility. It's a landfill, and once it is ready, then obviously traffic movement solutions for heavy trucks carrying waste from this to and fro into this site will be important, aspects to be addressed beforehand. So yes, so basically it's a very good and very significant submission, and we need to be talking about it straight away. Thank you.
Thank you. Any councillor wishing to speak against the motion? Any other councillor wishing to add comment for the motion? I will actually. Now that nobody's spoken against the motion, look, this document is extremely important. We see ourselves as one of Australia's major transport hubs, if not the major regional hub in this whole country, not just Victoria. And I think that status will only become more and more enhanced as we move and grow into the future. So if this document can affect the decision-making processes of the powers that be, it's worth its weight in gold. So I hope it does actually find a place in the minds of the decision-makers. I'm sure it will, and hopefully some of these extensive items that have been listed here
that they really ought to have another look at the routes.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor. That being said, all in favour of the motion? Against? Motion carried. Item 9.3, councillors, the Greater Shepparton Heritage Open Day for 2017. We have a recommendation on page 31. Any councillor wishing to move a motion, please? Councillor Abdullah.
Page 31, the recommendation as motion, and it says that Council resolved to host a Greater Shepparton Heritage Open Day in association with the Greater Shepparton Heritage Advisory Committee on the 28th October 2017.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor O'Keefe. Councillor Abdullah, do you wish to speak to the motion?
The Heritage Advisory Committee has worked hard to investigate the feasibility of holding this Heritage Open Day, and I think it's inspired by the Melbourne Open Day, but it's a it will be a council-led event, and I think it will give the confidence back to the people that Greater Shepparton's heritage is significant, and there's so much that we can achieve in terms of tourism, economic development, and our heritage preservation. So it's a fantastic idea to hold the open day.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I think Councillor Abdullah has covered that fairly well. I think the recommendation to host a Greater Shepparton Heritage Open Day is a positive move, raising awareness obviously of the range of places of cultural heritage significance, as well as to promote community participation in cultural heritage issues and values within the municipality. I think this is becoming quite obvious in the community that we need to be in this space. So I think moving with an open day, the committee is obviously doing a great job. I think it's a positive thing to have an open day and engage with our community more.
It certainly is a positive initiative, I agree. Any other councillor wishing to speak against this motion? Or the motion? Councillor Summer.
Only to say that this marries in very well with our current heritage investigation that's going on right now. It's a fun way of turning around the perception that Greater Shepparton lacks heritage. Hopefully we'll get a lot of kids involved, and the more people become aware of how important heritage is, perhaps we'll get some more heritage type things coming out of the woodwork that we can include and showcase on a broader scale.
Good, thank you. Any other councillor wishing to comment for or against? None. Thank you. Councillor Abdullah, any closing comments?
No. Thank you.
Okay, good. All in favour of the motion? Against? Motion carried. Item 9.4, councillors, is the statutory planning update, October 2016 to May 2017. Do I have a councillor wishing to move a motion? Councillor Giovanetti.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd like to move the motion that the council note the planning permit VCAT development hearings panel and enforcement file information detailed in this report.
As printed on page 35.
As per page 35 of the agenda, yes.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Summer. Councillor Giovanetti.
Actually, Mr Mayor, this is very pleasing. The briefing report that we've had from staff indicates that our planning department are working successfully. Although there's been a decrease in planning applications lodged for the same period of 2015-16, the statutory time frame that we are required to meet, we've actually improved on previous years. Just to give you a bit of an indication of that, we find that the average decision-making time for the planning permits from October 2016 till the end of May 2017 was 44.38 statutory days, and the average decision-making time for the corresponding period last year was 46.32 days, which is an improvement of 2 days, which I'm sincerely hoping, speaking with the staff involved, we can actually improve on that for next year, and I think that's their intent. So I think overall, planning department have done a very good job over the last 12 months in improving where we were from the same time last year.
Good, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Summer.
I'll reiterate what Councillor Giovanetti just said. This is a competitive field in planning, and we obviously this report is an attestament to our staff. They're very professional and quite ambitious when it comes to setting themselves out amongst the field. It's a really interesting read here. Like Councillor Hazelman mentioned before with the contracts awarded under delegation, that sometimes these reports, the most interesting ones, are hidden in the agenda. So these don't necessarily come to us. It's all there in black and white about where we are with VCAT activity, where we are with planning applications and the DHP. It's a really interesting read. It's just sort of a behind-the-scenes insight into the workings of our planning department. So I'm quite pleased with the results. As was mentioned, there is a lapse in planning applications, but there was a spike last year. So there are reasons for these peaks and troughs, and ultimately our department strives for the utmost in high performance, and I encourage them all the way.
Thank you. Any councillor wishing to speak against the motion?
I know they take pride in being as quick as they possibly can and as Councillor Summer said, that they're trying to improve their times every year, and I think it's terrific. They do a great job.
Thank you, Councillor. I tend to agree with you. I think this planning update shows that we're heading in the right direction. I think it's one of the most important documents this council has, as we're measured on that by the community in how quick we can resolve their planning permits. So it looks as if we're heading in the right direction, so all indicators are good, and that's a great thing for council and for the community. Councillor Giovanetti, any closing comments?
Just in closing, Mr Mayor, what Councillor Patterson said was correct, that the planning department
Page 44 of the agenda.
There you go, mate.
Yeah, that's good.
We won't be reading it all out. Thank you, Councillor Hazen. We can all read. A seconder, please. Councillor O'Keefe. Councillor Hazelman.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, it's been a matter of contention, probably going back to the comments about the planning department, that the development hearings panel, I think some of the commentary about it has been misguided. People haven't fully understood what the panel does. And since its introduction back in August of last year, there's been 4 hearings and some 19 planning permits that have been determined. And those planning permits would have either been determined by officers under delegation or ended up through the council process. And what the DHP process about the process, it's somewhat formal. There is a set process for applicants, objectors, ask questions, and we've diversified the work of the panel. We're now incorporating representation from other municipalities, professional planning staff from Shire of Moira, Shire of Strathbogie, and we'll soon expand that to include Campaspe and Benalla. I think it's a particularly good process, and I would hope that perhaps councillors who are in two minds about how the DHP works actually come along to one and sit in the gallery and observe how it actually operates, because I think it's a particularly good process, and the positive feedback we've been getting from both applicants and objectors, where they get the opportunity to have their case heard. They want to have their say. It's not a case of sitting in a room downstairs talking to planners. They get a good hearing, and I think the process has been extremely valuable and really worthwhile.
Good, thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Keefe?
Actually, Councillor Hazelman covered that very well. Thank you. I had
He
a
did,
few points, but
didn't he?
they've been covered, so thank you.
Right, any councillor wishing to speak against the motion? For the motion? Councillor Summer.
Only that. It has been a long saga, the DHP. We've been poking and prodding at it, hoping to get it right, and I hope that this is a version that will stick for a while.
Okay, thank you. We're poking and prodding at it, have we? I thought it was quite successful. That being said, Councillor Hazelman, any closing comments?
I don't think the version actually changes. We're just increasing the membership to provide a degree of more flexibility, which is good. The transparency's never been missing, and I think that what is particularly interesting is that some of the commentary, as I said in my previous comments, perhaps hasn't been as well informed as it could be. And I repeat my invitation: if people want to come along to the DHP, sit in the gallery and observe how it operates, I think they'll be far better informed. What I also commented before, it has reduced the number of appeals being made to VCAT, but the DHP process doesn't take away either the applicant or the objector's VCAT appeal rights. If they're not happy with the outcome, they've still got that. All this does is provides a quicker turnaround time for people, and it provides a direct opportunity for people to engage around the table with a variety of people to get an outcome. And from my experience from the number of these that I've chaired is that, yeah, people might not get 100% of what they want, both applicants and objectors, but in a mediated process, they get an outcome that they can rely on.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. All in favour of the motion?
Objectors as recently as yesterday, and they had some really good points that perhaps a large cool store and packing shed such as this is not strictly a agricultural use. Perhaps it's more suited to commercial and rural use. Now, we have gone back and considered that, and since Matthew Guy relaxed the planning conditions in the farming zone, this would go, well, could, I can't always say it would because there's all conditions that are attached to this project, and admittedly they look great on paper, and I really do hope that the reality is that there will be minimum disruption to the surrounding properties. Ultimately, we have to take these cases on merit as a case by case, and to me the benefits outweigh the negatives, so I am in favour of this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Patterson.
Yes, with any development there's always winners and losers. We met with a couple yesterday, as most councils.
For the motion.
Thank you, Mr.
Councillor Giovanetti.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is a significant development for Greater Shepparton City. I think that, as Councillor Patterson has mentioned, it's something that is going to provide a significant amount of benefit to our municipality over many years to come. The amount of employment that's going to be created with this development is going to be large. I do sympathise with the objectors, but the fact of the matter is we need to make this decision based on sound planning advice, and this is what we have. The only issue I would have is that, as Councillor Summer mentioned earlier, is that the conditions are met, particularly those pertaining to noise. I think that could be a significant issue, but we have been advised that will be monitored once the development is up and running, and I'm confident that if that's the case, then there shouldn't be an issue.
Good, thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor wishing to speak against? For? Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's always very difficult when it affects people's lives, whether it's 1 or 100. It gets down to compassion. The residents there, but I do see there's substantial advantage to our community going ahead with this project.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor wishing to add comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, when you get a difficult planning matter like this, I think it's always timely to think about what council's role is, and quite clearly our role, as mandated under the Act, is to administer the Planning and Environment Act. And notwithstanding Section 60 of the Act, which takes into account potential social impacts, I think we need to follow the guidelines and the rules and the professional advice of our officers as much as we can. It's when you diverge from that advice you end up in VCAT with $100,000 type expenditures referred to previously, and that's something we certainly want to avoid. Having said that though, and look, there is an enormous range of permit conditions that have been applied, and as we commented previously in relation to the was probably far more intrusive than this one, but however it got through it got approved at VCAT. That's the type of precedent people will look at. It's probably the sort of thing that I'm mindful of in assessing this type of application, but at the same time understanding the position that the objectors are in. It's not a very pleasant or likeable circumstances, but at the end of the day, on the professional advice of our officers, we need to approve the application.
Great, thank you, Councillor. No further comment from any other councillors? For or against? No, thank you. Councillor Summer, any closing comments?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That being said, all in favour of the motion? Against? Motion carried. Item 10, councillors, tabled motions. We have none. Item 11, reports from council delegates to other bodies. We have none as well. Reports from special committees and advisory committees, nil. Notice of motions, amendments or rescissions, nil. Documents for signing and sealing, nil. Item 15.1, council community interaction and briefing program. No problem, great. All in favour of the motion, please, councillors? Councillor Giovanetti, in favour? Against? Motion carried. Now, item 16.1, councillors. Assemblies of councillors. We have a recommendation on page... Goodness, now I've got to find it. 81, was it? On page 81. Do I have a councillor wishing to move a motion, please?
Is every month for councillors, so it just gives people an indication as to the workload that there is.
Great, thank you. Councillor Sutton? Nothing? Good. Any councillor wishing to speak against the motion? For the motion? Councillor Giovanetti? Any closing comments?
No closing comments, Mr Mayor.
All in favour? Against? Carried. Any urgent and other business not included in the agenda, councillors? None, thank you. Public question time. Do we have any questions? Well, John.
He'll do better next month.
Next time. Thank you. That being said, councillors, thank you. I declare the meeting closed at 6:30.